Since 2015, Jared Stillman has rocked Nashville sports.
That team freaking stinks.
And now he's back. The takes are hotter than ever.
I mean, let's be honest, he just can't coach.
Welcome to Stillman and Company.
Happy Titans Monday to everybody out there. Stillman and Company right here on the 440 Sports Network. We are presented by Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. We have an absolutely loaded show today. It is a Titans Monday. We're going to get a lot of Titans in. We've got the trade deadline tomorrow in 25 hours from right now. Plus, I do have thoughts on Vanderbilt, what happened with them this weekend. I do have thoughts on the World Series, which got a massive, I was surprised. I thought it was going to get about 20 million. It got 26 million viewers for Game 7 of the World Series. And I got thoughts on the Chiefs and the Bills. So it's not just Jared banging on the Titans for an hour or an hour and a half or however long we end up going today. But that is probably how we're going to start today. So, another Titans Monday, another Titans loss. This is the first time, by my calculations, in the Tennessee era, which includes the 2 Whisenhunt years and last year, that the Titans have started off 1-8 through their first 9 games. And as I was talking to my dad about that yesterday, he said, that's kind of crazy because he said, we've lived through some really shitty teams and really bad seasons. And I say, yeah, that's how bad it is. And I thought yesterday's game against the Chargers actually featured some positives. The defense got 6 sacks. They had a pick 6. The Titans had a punt return for a touchdown. Joey Sly made his field goals. And yet they lost because they scored 6 points on offense. Not only because Cam Ward had a QBR of 13.8, but in large part because Cam Ward had a QBR of 13.8. And I looked it up this morning. Cam Ward has the worst QBR, which is a stat that ESPN developed in the mid-2000s, which is supposed to kind of track quarterback success. So it doesn't view all completions as the same. It doesn't view all passing yards as the same. It tries to isolate the quarterback position. And is it perfect? No, none of it's perfect. But Cam Ward has the worst QBR of any starting quarterback in the NFL. And I said it yesterday on Post Game Live. I felt like I was banging my head against the microphone because I'm watching the Titans improve, except at the quarterback position. And the thing that everybody was worried about this season was the improvement and development of the quarterback position. And it feels like the quarterback position last week or yesterday took a big step backwards. And then I watched Sunday Night Football. Who else watched Sunday Night Football last night? Again, Cam Ward against the Chargers had a QBR of 13.8. Sam Darnold last night put on a show. His QBR last night, and QBR is from 0 to 100. So think of it like an English test. Cam Ward got a 13.8 F. Sam Darnold got a 97.8 A plus. And I'm not going to lie to you. I took real joy out of watching that beautiful first half performance by a quarterback that a lot of you people out there, not all, but a lot of you people out there told me sucked all last offseason. And I was watching Sunday Night Football with my dad. And my dad doesn't follow the NFL like most of us. I mean, he watches the Titans and he'll watch the playoffs and he watches the big games. But if you were to ask my dad right now who's on Monday Night Football, I don't think he'd know the answer. He didn't even know that the Bills and the Chiefs were playing each other yesterday until he saw the CBS crew in Buffalo and was like, why are they in Buffalo? And it actually kind of hit me. That CBS SEC deal has been real bad for CBS for them losing it. But I think that's another thing that they lose is think about how much advertising CBS would have had advertising the Chiefs-Bills game that people like my dad would have seen who don't watch college football on CBS anymore. And so he didn't have any idea until yesterday that the Chiefs are playing the Bills. So again, my dad does not follow this stuff the way I follow it, the way that a lot of you follow it. But he knows I was adamant about the Titans, about me wanting the Titans to acquire Sam Darnold. Whether it was in free agency or working out a trade with Minnesota. And Darnold, I think, ultimately would have cost you a 4th-round pick in order to acquire from Minnesota, and then you could have tagged him or signed him to an extension, and he probably would have liked the money up front, so he probably would have signed an extension. And we watched him, my dad and I think many of you, we watched Sam Darnold last night put on a display that looked like Tom Brady in his prime against a team that that went to the NFC Championship game last year. Even I, the biggest supporter, the biggest believer in Sam Darnold. Again, I bought my Sam Darnold stock, Gentry Estes of the Tennessean, and I bought our Sam Darnold stock when he went 4-2 down the stretch with the Carolina Panthers in 2022. Everybody else waited to see what he did in Minnesota before they decided to buy stock. We bought stock before Minnesota. And so I'm a big believer in Sam Darnold, in the talent and what he's been through and the ability. And even I was watching last night thinking, oh my God, did you see that one? You know, the throw he had to Arroyo right there in the seam, that was a Drew Brees throw right over a linebacker's head. A throw on the sideline to Smith and Jigba. I mean, just hit him right in the hands. There was one where there was a blitz, and he loads up to throw, and I see him chuck the ball down the field, and I'm looking, and there's number 15, Horton, wide open, nobody around him, and he just drops the ball right into the basket. And I'm sitting there watching the game with my dad, and I'm like, oh my God. Oh my God. If I was GM of the Titans, that would be your quarterback. Not the 13.8 QBR. And so, again, most of you people are actually on board with me and think that if you could go back and do it, we've talked about it, Cam versus Sam. I spent all offseason talking about the month of January, February, and March until the Titans went into free agency and made the decision not to go after Sam Darnold, and they made it obvious that they were going to draft Cam Ward. And then after the fact, when we found out what the Giants were allegedly offering the Titans, we talked at length about Cam versus Sam. And I think a lot of people were more in the camp of Sam, fool's gold Darnold, product of Kevin O'Connell in Minnesota, stinky with the Jets. He's okay. But he's not Cam Ward. He doesn't have the ability. And I think that's how most people felt around the draft. Well, I ran a poll this morning. Most people don't think that now, because I did ask the question, was the Titans' decision to draft Cam Ward over signing Sam Darnold and taking the Giants trade offer? Because once again, if you sign Sam Darnold, the Giants trade offer doesn't go away. The Giants trade offer is 1, 1, 2, 2. And with Cam Ward quarterbacking, the Giants, without Malik Neighbors and now Cam Scatteraboo, they would have sucked too. So that would have been the number 2 pick, number 1 pick, number 3 pick in this upcoming draft. Was that the right decision? Cam over Sam. 71.2 say no. 11% of you say you have no opinion on it. So only 18% of the people still think that it was the right decision to go Cam over Sam. So I can't get on a bunch of you people. I can only get on some of you people. But I've got to know, as I watched that game last night, as I watched that first half last night, I gotta know, how does Amy Adams Strunk feel? Surely she knew Sam Darnold could have been their quarterback. How does Chad Brinker feel? How does Mike Borgonzi feel? And I'm just going to keep it 100% with you. If you listen to me on the radio, you know that I was begging every day for the Titans to go after Sam Darnold. If you've seen me on Twitter, You know I was begging for the Titans to go after Sam Darnold. I'm going to tell you this right now. I told the Titans, told them through the radio, not put it out. I told them, go get Sam Darnold. The Titans decided, I think we're okay. Now, I'm not here to wag my finger at the Cam over Sam crew, though I'm sure deep down many of you feel sick to your stomach when you watch Darnold light up the NFL and then you see Cam Ward play like complete and total ass. But I do wonder, how far back have the Titans set themselves with this? This was so simple. And it's almost like every time the Titans make a big move, I keep begging them not to do it. I'm like, don't do that. Don't half measure. Vrabel out the door, ran Carthon up the food chain. Oh, Jared, you don't understand. Bust. Don't keep Chad Brinker in here. Go blow this up. Get a real experienced football guy in here who knows what they're doing, who has made boneheaded mistakes before so they know what not to do. Let him decide on the coach to see if the coach is any good. No. Brinker's in charge. Bust. Well, don't take Cam Ward because you'd be overdrafting a quarterback who's only going to go number one in this year's class because there's nobody else who's any good to go off the top of the board. Don't go do that. Don't do that. Go get the real, go get a real quarterback. Oh, no. He's Mahomes. Bust. And I do wonder if you're the Titans, is there any reflection here when it comes to this decision to pass on a guy who right now might be the MVP of the NFL in order to draft the guy who right now might be the worst quarterback in the league? And I know every time Sam Darnold lights someone up on national television, which is now about every other week, I get the same messages on Twitter from the deniers out there who want to pretend that the Titans did not incompetently pass on a 28-year-old, not a 38-year-old, a 28-year-old seasoned in his prime MVP caliber quarterback for a 22-year-old project with bad mechanics and no elite traits. And I get the same messages every time. Sam Darnold wouldn't do that here. Yeah, maybe not. Maybe Sam Darnold wouldn't be Tom Brady here. But guess what? Sam Darnold wouldn't be 1-8 either. Sam Darnold has a better roster. Sam Darnold has better coaching. Again, just constantly knocking the things that Sam Darnold has done. Those were the excuses last year when he won 14 games as a 27-year-old starting quarterback and got no credit. So he leaves his team because they don't want him, because the coach thinks I'm the reason Sam Darnold was good. And he leaves that team and goes to a team that did not make the playoffs last year and does not have a top 20 NFL player on their roster. Before you tell me that Jackson Smith-Njigba is a top 20 NFL player, nobody considered JSN a top 20 player before this season when Sam Darnold showed up. So he goes to a team that didn't make the playoffs without a top 20 NFL player, and he's playing for a second-year defensive head coach. So it's not as if he's playing for Sean McVay or Kevin O'Connell or Kyle Shanahan, but a second-year defensive coach whom you interviewed and didn't hire. And last night, finally, Chris Collinsworth said at one point on the broadcast, when they were talking about all the different teams Darnold has played for and how, finally it's a fit in Minnesota and finally it's a fit in Seattle. And Collinsworth just goes, maybe he's just really good. And that's something that most of America, not just the Titans, but most of America just doesn't seem to get. Sam Darnold is good. Just like Baker Mayfield is good. I know they weren't always good. He's good. But everybody remembers the comment his second year in the league when he was seeing ghosts with the Jets, and so they just decided that he was going to be bad forever. And I'm fine with fans thinking that. I'm fine with the media narrative being that. I'm fine with people who don't have skin in the game and aren't paid millions of dollars to make these decisions. I'm fine with them thinking that. What I'm not fine with is the Titans trying to rebuild the ball club and thinking they're too good for a guy who might be the league's most valuable player right now. And so I need to know. Why did they pass on Sam Darnold? Why did they fall in love with Cam Ward? Why did they turn down the Giants' massive offer? And I don't need to know theories, although I have them. I don't need to know theories. I need to know why. Because, yes, I feel vindicated for my entire offseason of begging the Titans to go get Sam Darnold. And yes, I feel validated in my pre-draft criticism of Cam Ward. I expect fans to fall in love with the prospect. I expect fans to latch on to guys like Louis Riddick going on television saying, he's Mahomes, and then them saying, he's Mahomes. But I don't expect the guys that actually do this for a living to get caught up in the hype. It feels like the way the Titans did. So again, the why they went Cam over Sam, I think is very important. Because once you allow yourself to admit that the Titans made a terrible mistake in passing on Sam Darnold and passing on the Giants trade and taking a quarterback who's not that good, maybe one day he can be good, but right now he's not, then we can figure out if these guys really are the ones to fix the problem, or if there's any hope that anybody can fix the problem given the state of Titans ownership. That's what we really have to determine here. I know there are a lot of people that want to we want to put ownership out of it because we know we can't change ownership. So what we want to do is we want to just say, okay, well, but if the Borgonzi, comes in here but there are examples of guys like Todd Bowles. Todd Bowles is a good coach, but he couldn't win with the Jets. Well, is that a Todd Bowles problem or is that a Jets problem? Do you think that if you were general manager of the Cleveland Browns with Jimmy Haslam sticking his nose in there when something important happens, that you'd be able to build a winning team? I don't think I could. Why isn't Sam Darnold his quarterback? So it's important to get to the bottom of trying to figure out why the Titans and their brass, which preached patience, draft, develop, retain, told us all you needed to stabilize, solidify the quarterback position, that said they needed draft picks. They needed 12 top 100 picks over the next 3 drafts, and why they decided to overdraft a quarterback instead of taking the trade or solidifying the position with a guy who right now might be the best quarterback in the NFL this season. So let's start off on the reasons why I wonder the Titans may have fallen into the trap of falling in love with the prospect. First, though, we're going to talk about Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Why? Because Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical takes great care of my home, and I promise you one thing, they can do the exact same for you. Hiller's been in business since 1990. They're family owned and operated with 100% satisfaction. If happy you'll be, or the service is free. If a customer is not pleased with the work performed, Hiller will make it right. Learn more right now at happyhiller.com. Hiller, professional, experienced, trustworthy technicians that come into your home, leave it clean and better than they found it. Again, I know this because I use Hiller at my home. They do a fabulous job, and I promise you they'll do the exact same for you. Care is their core value, and they believe that when they care about others, like me and you, everybody wins. And they take care of the customer on every job, every time. Hiller, proud supporters of the Nashville Predators. I am going to the game tonight, by the way. The Nashville Predators, the Vanderbilt Commodores, and the Tennessee Volunteers. That's Hiller. Call the Happy Face Truck today. Okay. Again, once we can all admit, once we can all sit down and we can say, you know what? Sam Darnold was the right call. trading the pick with the Giants was the right call. Cam Ward not ready to become a superstar quarterback in this infrastructure, in this shithole of an organization. With all of that going on, how did they fall into the trap of drafting Ward? Because the thing I have the hardest time when it comes to believing that this is ever going to get any better is thinking about how could the guys who fucked it up so bad this offseason, again, passing on an MVP candidate in order to go with the guy who has the lowest QBR in the league. How are they, if they weren't smart enough to do that, and it was simple enough to me, how could they possibly get this right? So I need to know the reason of why they fell into the trap of drafting Cam Ward before I can assess who actually got it wrong or whether or not they've learned from their mistakes. So I've come up with these theories, these reasons as to why I feel like they've decided we're taking Cam no matter what. And I've said this in the past. There is a certain level of talent when it comes to the quarterback position. There is a certain level of talent that I would not trade out of. Trevor Lawrence, who has not been that good in the NFL, is that level of talent. If I had the Trevor Lawrence pick and you offered me the Giants trade, I wouldn't do it and I would draft Trevor Lawrence because he was that level of prospect coming out. Drake May, Caleb Williams, Jayden Daniels, all that level. Cam Ward was never that level. The NFL executives told ESPN he's more like Bo Nix and J.J. McCarthy than he is like Caleb, Jayden, or Drake. So the number one reason why I feel like they may have fallen in love with Cam Ward, I think they may have fallen in love with the story of Cam Ward, the idea of Cam Ward. I think a lot of you have fallen in love with the story of Cam Ward. I have entered a phase in my life where my friends are starting to get divorced. And in some cases, some of my friends are starting to remarry. There's the phase where we all graduate high school together. There's the phase where everybody goes to college. There's the phase where everybody gets out of college and everybody's starting entry-level jobs and making no money. Then people start getting married. Then people start having kids. And now I'm at the phase where people are starting to get divorced. Caroline Fenton, for instance, she's at the phase where people are starting to get married. She hasn't been through her friends getting divorced. That'll come in about 5 years. And a lot of times when people get divorced, in my experience, it's because they should have never married the person that they married in the first place. They weren't compatible. They weren't respected. But they loved the idea of marrying the person that they married more so than they actually loved the person that they married. We all have that friend, right? She got married to somebody, not because that guy was her Prince Charming, but because she wanted to be married. That is what I think happened with the Titans and Cam. Cam was a zero-star recruit who had built himself up in college football. He had swagger and confidence, and I get it. And there has to be a belief that if he can overcome being a zero-star recruit and being sent off to Incarnate Word and having to quarterback there, then he can do anything. But at the end of the day, Cam Ward was a 6'2 quarterback with bad mechanics. And by not taking the trade with the Giants, you don't have the picks to build a foundation around Cam Ward to where you can bring him along slowly, which is what it was going to require. That's what the Denver Broncos have done with Bo Nix. But the Denver Broncos, they didn't fall in love with the idea of Bo Nix. They knew what Bo Nix was. They knew what his limitations were. And they said, we're going to build a defense and Sean Payton's going to protect him. The Titans didn't do that. They just fell in love with the story of Cam Ward. This guy was overlooked going into college, and look at him now. Well, that's great. But if he's not accurate, that's not going to work in the NFL. So that's the first reason. I think they may have fallen in love with the idea of Cam more so than what Cam actually represented. And that's why you grade players. And I don't know what their grades were. But that's why you grade players. Mel Kiper Jr. talked about his grades, saying, I don't have the same grade for Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders. I don't have the same grade for them that I had on the top quarterbacks last year. J.J. McCarthy, according to Mel Kiper Jr., would have gone ahead of Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders in this year's draft. That's why you grade them, so that you can put them up there and you can say, okay, if we're going to draft this guy number 1 overall and we think he grades out less than every other quarterback in the league, then we're going to get our butts beat. And we have to develop him. But when you fall in love with the idea of, well, he is tough, he's got swagger, he's a leader, when you fall in love with all of that and the story, and you want to live the life of a Disney movie, then you talk yourself into dumb shit like that. So that's the first reason. Reason number 2, Jayden Daniels. Jayden Daniels, going into this offseason, had set the NFL on fire, taking over a rudderless franchise and leading them to the NFC Championship game. They were 12-5 last season. Washington rebuilt their roster on the fly through a bunch of one-year deals in free agency with veteran players, and because of Jayden Daniels, they had a top 10 offense in the NFL. Washington managed to completely change their team while maintaining a relatively low payroll. They had the 19th largest payroll in the NFL last year, and it was because of the young phenom quarterback that they were able to do it. The problem is, when you look at what Washington did and you said, we want to do what Washington did, Cam's not Jayden Daniels. And Cam's not going to be Jayden Daniels. Jayden Daniels is 6'4". Cam is 6'2". That is a difference in the NFL. Jayden Daniels has elite athleticism. Cam does not. Jayden Daniels was a Heisman Trophy winner who played a lot of football and a lot of football in the SEC at LSU. To compare Jayden to Cam is a false equivalence. Most gurus did not believe that Cam Ward was on the same level as Jayden Daniels. In fact, Rick Spielman, who's now a senior advisor with the Jets, the former general manager of the Vikings, Rick Spielman, when working for CBS, compared Jayden Daniels to Lamar Jackson coming out, and he compared Cam Ward to Tyrod Taylor. Again, it's easy to fall in love with the idea. Well, he's Mahomes. But he's not. Well, he can come in here and be Jayden Daniels. And that's great if he's as good as Jayden Daniels. The problem is, he's not as good as Jayden Daniels, and he never was as good as Jayden Daniels. Jayden Daniels single-handedly beat Alabama when he was at LSU. Cam Ward couldn't beat Georgia Tech. So what happened was, a lot of people, and I remember this during the draft time, because I kept telling you, like, hey, all these draft guys, these insiders, these league executives, they're all telling us that, like, Jayden Daniels is not, or Cam Ward is not Jayden Daniels level. He is not CJ Stroud level. He is not that type of, he's not even Justin Fields or Mac Jones level. And it's like, but Jayden Daniels and CJ Stroud, Jared. Okay. And then reason 3, that I wonder if the Titans got trapped when it came to Cam Ward. Reason 3 is the money. And this is where I would take blame away from Chad Brinker and Mike Borgonzi if this ended up being the truth. And I am afraid that this, in fact, is the truth. Because if you remember the reporting after the combine, Kaharski came back and said they're out of the market on Sam Darnold unless the price drops, which means we like the player, we just don't want to pay a lot of money for it. So reason 3 could be the money. Sam Darnold cost $37.5 million in cash this year to the Seattle Seahawks. The tag number was around $40 million, which is what I would have paid Sam Darnold. I would have given Sam Darnold a better contract than he received in the open market. I would have given him a 4-year, $160 million contract, and I would have guaranteed $80 million of the money up front that day. I would have guaranteed Darnold 2 years, and I would have essentially guaranteed the third. Cam Ward, meanwhile, cost $34 million. So a difference of $3.5 million. But the number for Ward drops off significantly after this season, whereas Darnold's number does not. Add in the 3 Giants picks that would have been added in a trade, and the Titans would have been adding roughly $45 million to this year's payroll and $40 million to next year's payroll. Again, that's roughly $85 million. So when this football team is on the hook for over $800 million for a new stadium, and they are on the hook for cost overruns with that stadium, which are inevitable. If the price tag for a stadium is $2 billion, it will always end up being $2.3 billion, $2.4 billion. It is inevitable. I don't think there's been a single stadium built in the history of America in which came in under budget. And I would love to know how many of them actually came in on budget. So considering that anything over the estimated price the Titans have to pay for, all of a sudden, something has to give. Now, the difference between me and the Titans are that I'm smart enough to know that success at the quarterback position helps ticket sales, helps PSL sales. So that $40 million extra you probably would have been spending on this year's team would have eventually been offset, because if the Titans were 6-3 instead of 1-8, then you're going to sell more tickets. If you make the playoffs and you're hosting a home playoff game or two, you're probably going to offset the money that you would have lost anyways. It's certainly going to help PSL sales, which is another reason why I would have gone the Darnold route. But nobody's ever claimed that the Titans ownership was smart or that the Titans ownership put their money where their mouths were. And so I wonder how much of these empty crowds and their lack of faith in ownership and subsequent lack of desire to buy PSLs, very expensive PSLs at the new stadium, is going to hurt the bottom line. And so I wonder, did Mike Borgonzi and Chad Brinker, did they go into this wanting to bring in Sam Darnold? Looking at Sam Darnold the same way I did, which is, this is Alex Smith. And when Mike Borgonzi took the job, he talked about Alex Smith and how Alex Smith solidified the quarterback position in Kansas City, and they were able to build the team, and then they were able to bring in Mahomes, and they were able to develop Mahomes, and then they were able to turn it over to him. Did they see Sam Darnold as Alex Smith? And then Amy said, we don't have the money for that. And if that's the case, I don't know how you can blame Mike Borgonzi, because other owners in the NFL would have given you the financial wherewithal to make the move for Sam Darnold if your owner didn't. And then there's that fourth theory that's out there that Nick Suss said on the football show that he and I did together, which was he heard going into the combine that the Titans were in play on Sam Darnold and that they left the combine with Cam's the guy, and he thinks that's when Brian Callahan got involved. So Nick Suss has a hypothesis. It's certainly not he's not reporting it, but it's his hypothesis that when Brian Callahan got involved and the coaches got involved, they pushed for Cam Ward, which would be so depressing if that ends up being true. That, yeah, we were going to sign the guy who's right now an MVP candidate, but instead, we let our lame duck coach who can't coach shit go out there and talk us into the rookie quarterback who's on his way to being a bust. So those are the main reasons. And I need to know what the reason the Titans passed on Sam Darnold to take Cam Ward. I need to know that reason so I can figure out how the Titans get themselves out of this mess. If Mike Borgonzi sat down with Cam Ward at the combine and walked away from it and said, he's Mahomes, then I know that guy can't fix the Titans. If Mike Borgonzi wanted to bring in Sam Darnold, but Amy Adams Strunk wouldn't pay for it, well, then I know that Mike Borgonzi may not be the problem. But you won't have ownership that will ever allow you to compete. If they let Brian Callahan help make the decision, then they should all be fired. But if we don't know the reason for why the Titans made the biggest, most critical mistake, then I don't know how we assess how they get themselves out of this. At that point, you're probably just wasting your time hoping that the guys who already fucked up the first time can make good choices the second time. And I get it. Dallas Cowboy fans watch the draft every year. They know Jerry can't deliver them a championship, but they still watch, they still care, they still hope. But you know as well as I do, Jerry Jones can't build a championship team. Not anymore. And so I need to know who's at fault here, so then I know how they can fix it. So that's the first thing. Again, I mean, this idea that Sam Darnold, they could have had Sam freaking Darnold, who might be the NFL's most valuable player. And instead they took Cam Ward, who has a QBR of like 23. Adam in Portland, this has to be the worst show you've done so far. Pick a better topic. But I tell you, some people, they don't want to hear the truth. For whatever that's worth. Okay, we will get to some of your reaction on the Cam over Sam front, but I do want to hit on the trade deadline because the trade deadline is in 24 and a half hours. The Titans will be essentially done as far as any sort of roster building is concerned until January. How depressing is that? The Titans have a lot out there, and we'll see if people want to do business with the Titans. Yesterday, both Ian Rappaport and Mike Florio separately reported that the Titans are shopping Calvin Ridley. TD later checked into that and said what he was hearing was that that's not true. Now, again, Rappaport and Florio, big-time national guys, they're probably hearing from other teams who are telling them the Titans are shopping Calvin Ridley. TD probably talked to the team, and the team said, we're not shopping Calvin Ridley. So here's my take on that. I think the Titans are shopping Calvin Ridley, and they found nobody who's interested. It seems like the Titans want to move the assets that they no longer find useful or no longer want, like Arden, Key, and Chigakonkwo, while keeping the assets that they think matter in the short term as well as the long term for Cam's development. So use Kevin Zeitler, who probably won't be on the team next year. He's a starting right guard. He's better than the backup right guard. You'd rather have him out there for the rest of the season while Cam's playing quarterback. Here's the reality about the trade deadline, in my opinion, when it comes to the Titans. There's nothing on the roster other than Jeffrey Simmons that can give you a good return anyway. And they've already said multiple times, for whatever reason, I don't know, they're not trading Jeffrey Simmons. Now, I think the Titans will make trades tomorrow because I think they're determined to make trades. I just don't think they'll make any trades that bring back assets that will really help the ball club improve down the road. And I'm going to use the last 2 years of sell-offs as kind of the example for how you really don't get much this time of the year. For example, 2 years ago, the Titans traded Kevin Byard for Jarvis Brownlee Jr. and Jaquan Jackson, or at least the two picks that would become Jarvis Brownlee Jr. and Jaquan Jackson. Neither of those two guys are on the team right now. Last year, they traded Ernest Jones for a fourth-round pick from Seattle, which ended up being pick number 120, Gunnar Helm. Last year, they traded DeAndre Hopkins to the Kansas City Chiefs for pick number 167, which became Jackson Slater. So in 2 different seasons of selling and 3 separate trades, the end result right now, 20 catches and 1 touchdown for a backup tight end. That's really what's out there. I'm not saying I'd turn down extra 5th and 6th round picks because you could use those to trade for veteran players this offseason to help fill out the roster. But if you think you're going to rebuild the ball club with trades that equal 5th and 6th round picks, that's just silly. Again, when the Titans made it to the playoffs, when the Titans were good and had the number 1 seed, they had 1 6th round pick starting. That was their 6th round pick. It was David Long Jr. Everybody else was a high pick. So that's the first thing of they'll make trades tomorrow. I don't know who it'll be. I assume it'll be Chig. I assume that it'll be one or two of the pass rushers, even though those guys aren't very good, like Arden Key. And then there's T'Vondre Sweat. And this is the one that I would tell Mike Borgonzi or Chad Brinker, or whoever is in charge over there. I would say this is the one to be careful with. Be very careful with trading T'Vondre Sweat. And look, I don't love T'Vondre Sweat. I thought it was a massive overdraft to use the 38th overall pick on a run-stuffing nose tackle who had all those red flags. But the truth is, you've already picked T'Vondre Sweat. So he's already on your team. You can't go back and undo it. And T'Vondre Sweat is a legitimate run-stuffing defensive tackle. I'm no T'Vondre Sweat fan. But if you trade T'Vondre Sweat, you have to get real value in return. And a 5th-round pick is not real value. This isn't like Roger McCreary or Chigakonkwo, guys with expiring contracts who you're not interested in re-signing, so they 100% will not be on your team next year. T'Vondre Sweat is signed for 2 more seasons. So if you get rid of T'Vondre Sweat, now you have another hole you have to go fill this offseason because now you need a nose tackle. We already know you're going to need a running back. We already know you're going to need a receiver. We already know you need a tight end. We already know you need 3 corners. We already know you need an inside backer. We already know you need pass rushers. We already know you're probably going to need another safety. We already know that. Well, now you have to go get a nose tackle, which again is not free. It's not worth the 38th pick, but it's not free either. And the other thing just to be aware of, because I don't know if these guys are worried about doing their job or worried about protecting their job. But if they're worried about protecting their job, T'Vondre Sweat is popular amongst this fan base. And the owner of this team listens to the fan base. And the fans are already mad, and rightfully so, because the Jarvis Brownlee Jr. trade was so inexplicably bad. But this is one with Sweat where I know he's lazy, and I know you might not like him, but there's a lot of negative that's going to come if you just dump him when he's already proven to be a serviceable NFL role player. So I'd be very careful on the T'Vondre Sweat front if I was Mike Borgonzi and Chad Brinker. But it looks like, again, just reading the tea leaves, they want to get rid of Sweat. And that goes back to all the red flags when he was drafted and teams taking him off the board. And it seems like no matter how much some of you people said, that's not true, let Rand cook, I don't care what anonymous scouts have to say, they might have been right. Just like it looks like they're right about Cam Ward. Just like they try to tell a lot of people out there around the country about Shedeur Sanders. They tried to say, hey, this kid had the worst interview we've ever had. And instead, it was Josina Anderson and Stephen A. Smith yelling and screaming instead of saying, maybe Shedeur should have acted like less of an a-hole in the draft process. Let's get to some of your reaction here today on the program, if you want. Max says, Jared, what do you think the Titans should do if they're picking at number 1 overall again? So let me say this as far as I don't know who's available in the draft. I know the names. Like I know Ruben Bain is supposedly the top pass rusher in the draft. I have no idea if Ruben Bain's any good. Like, is he Myles Garrett? If he's Myles Garrett, take him. If he's not, probably trade out and build your team around it. I'm just depressed because I just don't think Cam's that good. And I think that no matter what you do, you're going to be building a team around an inferior quarterback. But if they have the number 1 overall pick, I would say this. If you have the number 1 overall pick, do your due diligence on the quarterbacks. It looks like Mendoza is the top guy off the board. Do your due diligence on the quarterbacks. Don't just say, well, we think we've got our guy, so let's take him. Because he might not be your guy. Because Cam is not showing anything right now to make me think that he's the guy. Wes says, Jared, we would have to pay Sam Darnold like a top 5 quarterback. We aren't an attractive destination, and it wouldn't look good. Okay, so I'm going to tell you this. I'm going to assume that you guys have never met Sam Darnold. I have. I can tell you this, because I think I reported this at the time. Sam Darnold was very open to joining the Titans. Sam Darnold was very, very open to being a Titan in free agency. The truth is, the Titans weren't interested. Just like Mac Jones. I have it on very good authority. Kaharski can probably connect the dots for you. I have it on very good authority that Mac Jones wanted to be a Tennessee Titan. And the Titans said, no, we're good. We don't need Mac Jones. We got Brandon Allen. We don't need Mac Jones. So this idea of like, well, you would have had to pay Sam like a top 5 quarterback. Remember, Sam Darnold's making $37.5 million. That's 13th in terms of cash in the NFL this year. And that's on the first year of a deal where guys usually get the most money and they get the signing bonus. The going rate for a quarterback right now is $55 million. Trevor Lawrence and Tua, Jordan Love, they're at the 55 mark. Sam's at 37. You're telling me that, oh, well, we couldn't afford to pay Sam Darnold. You're getting a discount with Sam Darnold. Everybody, the Seahawks are getting a huge discount. An MVP level quarterback that won 14 games last year and has the 3rd highest QBR in the league right now and is number 1, according to Pro Football Focus, at the position. And they're paying $37 million when the going rate for a starting quarterback is in the 50s. They're saving $20 million. Why would I have to pay Sam like a top 5 quarterback? Nobody else would. I do think it's incredible that when it comes to Darnold, all these teams with offensive coaches and inexperienced general managers were like, no, we don't need him. And the one team that circled him and said, hey, let's go get Sam Darnold is the one team with a Super Bowl winning general manager and a defensive head coach. They traded their starting quarterback, signed an MVP candidate, and acquired a 3rd-round pick in exchange for Geno Smith in the deal. They upgraded at quarterback, saved money because Geno makes more than Sam, and got a 3rd-round pick out of it. Amazing. William says, Jared acts like Sam Darnold would have this team in the playoff hunt. Let me ask you this question, William. Do you think you would have lost yesterday when you got a defensive touchdown and a special teams touchdown if Sam Darnold was your quarterback? Do you think you would have scored 6 points on offense if Sam Darnold was your quarterback? And I understand the coach for the Titans stinks, and I understand the team for the Titans stinks, though the team would be better because you would have the Giants picks in addition to your own picks. You wouldn't have to trade away the 35th pick in the draft, which Seattle, by the way, used on Nick Emanwari, who's very good, that you used on Femio Ladejo and Kevin Winston. You wouldn't have to trade that pick away because you wouldn't need to manufacture more draft capital because you would have already had a 1st-round pick and 2 high seconds. So you would have had a better team anyways. But do you think you're losing to the Chargers with a defensive touchdown and a special teams touchdown if Sam Darnold is the quarterback yesterday? Again, QBR is an ESPN stat, and QBR exists to try to isolate the quarterback. And QBR yesterday said Cam Ward out of 100 was 13.8. And Sam Darnold was 97.8. You think you lose yesterday? I don't. People ask me, how many wins do you think Sam would have on this team? I'm like, I don't know, 5, 6. And then people go, no, that's crazy. Well, you have no way to prove that. Just like I have no way to prove that he'd win 5 or 6. Adam in Portland says, spin like hell in free agency this year and use the good draft picks from trading your good pick and hopefully field a good team when they open the stadium in 2027. Boy, that's exciting. Here we are in November of 2025, and we're talking about maybe maybe they can be good in 2 years. When again, you could have just signed a guy right now who might be the league's MVP. That is the depressing part for me. Richard says they fell in love with Ward because he doesn't have Levis's main flaw, which is the panic gene. I mean, Will Levis's QBR last year is better than Cam Ward's this year. There is very little difference, in my opinion, between what we saw last year in Will Levis and what we're seeing in Cam Ward this year. There's not. They can't score on offense. Cam is not accurate. Cam's making boneheaded decisions. He's got a better offensive line than Levis had last year. So I'm very depressed about the state of the Titans because they fell in love with Cam. For whatever reason they fell in love with Cam for. They fell in love, in my opinion, with the wrong guy. Johnny says Sam was hitting late round picks for touchdowns. Yeah, number 15, Horton. I'm like, who the hell's that? Doesn't matter. Dude's lighting it up because that's what good quarterbacks do. You know, I'm a big proponent of looking at a quarterback and comparing them in two separate categories. To me, there are two separate categories to compare quarterbacks. There's the way a quarterback plays, as in the style. Like, nobody would ever say that Lamar Jackson plays like Peyton Manning. Nobody would ever say that because Lamar Jackson doesn't play like Peyton Manning did. But then there's the caliber of quarterback, in which you can argue that Lamar Jackson is the same caliber of quarterback that Peyton Manning was. League MVP, can carry you in the playoffs, those kind of things. So when it comes to Cam, and they were drafting Cam, I was more worried about the caliber of quarterback Cam could be. And that's when I saw Dane Brugler said he could be like Kyler Murray caliber. And I'm like, that's not good enough. What are you talking about? Kyler Murray caliber? And then there's the who does he play like? When you watch him play, who does he play like? In a perfect world, I think the quarterback that you want Cam Ward to play like is Brett Favre. Now, I don't think he's ever going to play like Brett Favre, but that's the kind of quarterback that you want him to play like. I think Baker Mayfield right now plays like Brett Favre. When I watched Sam Darnold yesterday and the way he was moving around in the pocket, the accuracy, the decisiveness, the pre-snap adjustments, I thought I was watching Tom Brady. I'm not talking about the caliber of play that I thought I was watching yesterday. I'm talking about the style of play with which I was watching. And I thought long and hard, I'm like, who does this remind me of? Like, watching it before I just want to jump off and say Brady. I'm like, who does this remind me of? It doesn't remind me of Kurt Warner because it's not, you know, that sidearm and chuck it 85 yards down the sideline to Torrey Holt. It doesn't remind me of Rich Gannon. It's not as all over the place as Brett Favre. It's not as fluid moving outside of the pocket like Aaron Rodgers. Like, who is that? And then I was like, oh my God, I'm watching Tom Brady. That's what I saw in the first half yesterday. Does that mean that he's Tom Brady? No, it doesn't mean that he's Tom Brady. But again, comparing the style of who that looked like yesterday, it looked like Tom Brady. It's like I said when I walked away from a Bengal-Titans game a couple years ago where Joe Burrow came in here and just kicked the Titans' ass. And I think Jamar Chase was injured in the game, and it didn't matter. And I walked away from that, and I'm like, that guy plays like John Elway. That guy yesterday played like Tom Brady. Now, I mean, that's just what I saw yesterday. Whew. I'm actually a little surprised. In the comments, we're not getting a bunch of anti-Sam takes. I am wondering, by the way, I've thought about this today too. The distinguished gentleman, TDG, where is he at? I thought about him last night when Sam Darnold was out there on Sunday Night Football, absolutely lighting it up. Mr. Fool's Gold Darnold, where are you TDG. Don't be going to safe spaces because Sam Darnold turned into Tom Brady last night. Joe says the Titans feel like an expansion team. No identity and no organizational integrity. I agree. I think the Titans are as bad as an expansion team right now, which is saying something. One texter says, it looks like the Titans made the mistake of taking Mariota 2.0 and not taking the picks. The Titans front office looks incompetent. If Sam Darnold was here, there's a chance Callahan would still be the coach. You know, I was talking to my dad about this yesterday. I think Callahan's a bozo, and I thought that whole Pee Wee program just kind of encapsulated his inability to actually coach grown adults. But coaching is like teaching. And I think you could go to a high school chemistry teacher who is a good high school chemistry teacher, and they could not teach the second grade. Sure, they can teach the material in the second grade, but you're dealing with a lot of different issues with second graders than you are with high school chemistry. And I've dated a couple of teachers, kindergarten, third grade, first grade over the years, and I can tell you right now, they ain't teaching chemistry. I don't think Brian Callahan's a good coach for a young quarterback. Now, I don't think Brian Callahan's a very good coach in general. But with a veteran quarterback who knows how to push back on a coach, who knows how to say, coach, we're not doing that. I think Callahan would have had a better shot. When a young quarterback comes in and it's like, you tell me what to do, I don't think that ever would have suited Callahan. If Callahan had a veteran quarterback who says, coach, this is what we need to do, I think he would have had a better shot. I do think Callahan is still the coach here if Sam Darnold's the quarterback. Greg says we don't say it enough, but Jared, you are right. Thank you, sir. Okay. Somebody said a radio personality said yesterday that it'll take 3 to 4 years to determine if Cam is effective. I need to know who that is. 3 to 4 years. You don't get 3 to 4 years in the NFL. Okay, couple other topics let's hit on today. Number one, the Bills and the Chiefs last night. I watched it. I'm sure everybody else watched the Bills and the Chiefs too. I'm sure it got a massive TV rating. So I don't want to get caught up in kind of this manufactured CBS hype for the Bills-Chiefs game, because it always feels like when these two teams play, CBS for the entire week is like, and be sure to tune in this afternoon for the game of the year. And I just don't feel like a regular season Chiefs-Bills game is the game of the year, given the fact that every year the Bills win the regular season game and then they meet in the playoffs and the Chiefs win. So I enjoyed watching it yesterday, but I wasn't holding on to my tush thinking this is going to be the greatest regular season game of all time. That having been said, I do feel like this year is a little different from the standpoint that the Bills and the Chiefs actually have to make the playoffs in order for them to meet in the playoffs. And as of right now, neither team is leading their division. But as I was watching the game yesterday, and I see a veteran Chiefs team, I see an old Chiefs team where they're trying to fit in new pieces in for spots where guys have moved on, whether it's Joe Tooney or L'Jarius Sneed or Donovan Smith or Tyrann Mathieu or Tyreek Hill or whomever. But I see Mahomes, he's still Mahomes, and then a much, much, much weaker team around Mahomes than I'm used to. And I kept wondering watching the game yesterday, thinking to myself, okay, as of right now, Kansas City's in the 8th spot in the playoffs, which means they're not in the playoffs. But if the AFC playoffs were held today, and let's say Kansas City makes it, and I think Kansas City is going to make it, who do you really think is going to take out the Chiefs in the playoffs? You going to go with Daniel Jones in Indianapolis to knock off the Chiefs? Don't think so. Drake May, New England, Bo Nix to beat Mahomes in a playoff game. And when I saw Mahomes convert that 4th and 17 last night, I'm like, yeah, he's not getting put out by the Chargers in the AFC playoffs. But if you're Buffalo, the big thing about winning yesterday, who, by the way, they're not in first place. The big thing about winning yesterday was maybe you can keep the Chiefs out of the playoffs. I don't think you will. But I think if you can keep the Chiefs out of the playoffs, that's your best bet, because I know you won the regular season game. If you play them in the playoffs again, we've seen it too many times. Buffalo will piss the game away. Mahomes will make a play, and that'll be that. And they'll lose. But it was entertaining. The other big game of the weekend, and I know some of you who have YouTube TV were very disappointed about this, but Vanderbilt. What an oddly disappointing performance by Vanderbilt on Saturday. Vanderbilt got their asses spanked from the opening play on the road at Texas, and yet still had a chance at the end of the game when the onside kick simply didn't bounce their way. If the ball takes the bounce more towards the inside of the field, there's a pretty good chance Vanderbilt recovers. And if Vanderbilt had recovered, who's to say they wouldn't have tied the game and sent it to overtime the way they were playing? I don't know what to make of the Vanderbilt game on Saturday, because there's a part of me that says, well, if you look at it and say, well, they only lost by 3, in spite of the fact that they played awful on Saturday. From the opening play, they were terrible. And they only lost by 3? You are doing what we've done for years when it comes to Vanderbilt football, and that is assigning moral victories. And I think Vanderbilt is now past the point of moral victories. I think those days are in the rearview mirror. So when I look at the fact that they lost and that they played terribly, they could not tackle in the first half. They could not get a key defensive stop or a big turnover when they desperately needed to shift the momentum in their favor. When I look at the fact that Diego Pavia on the second drive of the game fumbles the ball right to Texas, and now Vanderbilt's swimming upstream the whole game, and they still only lost by 3 on the road at Texas, I do think it's pretty telling of what they're capable of. And ESPN still gives Vanderbilt a 30% chance to make the college football playoff. If Vanderbilt beats Auburn and Kentucky, which they should, that would set up a date at Neyland Stadium. And Tennessee is out because they suffered their third loss over the weekend to Oklahoma in equally as demoralizing fashion as Vanderbilt got their asses kicked by Texas. But as much as Tennessee fans try to pretend like Vanderbilt's little brother to them, and Vanderbilt really doesn't matter, I think you'll get the best effort Tennessee's got to try to keep Vanderbilt out of the college football playoff, which means there's going to be real juice in that game. And the way Vanderbilt played at the end of the Texas game told me that if they go to Knoxville, they don't have to play a perfect game. They just don't have to play as terribly as they did in Austin on Saturday. They've got a real shot to win that game. Oklahoma and John Mateer, they weren't perfect on Saturday. So as I watched the Vandy game, I was somewhat sad thinking that any shot they had of making the playoff had gone away, because I've just assumed all year they're not going to go to Neyland Stadium and win. But the fact that Vanderbilt could play as terribly as they did, and they were awful, with the fact that they played as bad as they played, and they were still right there, told me the CFP dream isn't totally dead. They played terribly and still scored 31 points against a team that Ohio State scored 14 on. That's pretty telling. So, I'm just going to tell you, again, Vanderbilt, I don't want to get into the moral victory thing. Vanderbilt cost themselves maybe a for sure shot at the playoff by showing up and playing like shit on Saturday. But after the first quarter, I thought this was going to be the way it used to be with Vandy. I thought this was going to be 45-14 Texas, not 34-31. And finally, we got to get to the World Series. Has anybody else seen the TV ratings for the World Series for Game 7 and the World Series in general, which had very good TV ratings? So I thought, I'm a big baseball fan. Everybody knows that. I thought this was an incredible World Series. Like, I thought the Blue Jays Dodgers had so much drama, so much high caliber play in it, so much competitive baseball, So many fascinating storylines, so much drama. I felt like it was such a good World Series. To me, it was up there as one of the best World Series of my lifetime. And that's with the 2001 Yankees Diamondback series up there. That's with the 1997 Cleveland Florida World Series, which is up there. The 1991 Atlanta Minnesota World Series, which is absolutely up there. Maybe a couple before I was alive, like the 86 World Series between the Mets and the Red Sox, maybe even 75 Red Sox Reds. You know, that with the Carlton Fisk home run and then forcing a Game 7. I thought this was one of the best World Series I've ever seen. And apparently, most of America felt the same way too. Now, it sucked for me. I was rooting for the Blue Jays, considering that my family is half Canadian. We went to Game 2 in Toronto. It was awesome. Yoshinobu Yamamoto was fabulous. He was the MVP. He should have been the MVP. But I thought this World Series was incredible. I thought it was incredible television. I thought it was incredible drama. And America agrees. Because America watched on Saturday night to the tune of 26 million viewers. And that is on Saturday, which is the worst night for TV ratings and going up against a major college football game. And the numbers were astronomical. 26 million viewers for a game featuring a team in Canada. And a lot of people have made this comparison, and this is immediately where my brain went to. As soon as I saw the 26 million viewers, the NBA Finals had a Game 7, and it drew 16.35 million viewers. And that was on a Sunday night, which is a much better TV night. And they were not running against college football. They were unopposed. There is no doubt after this World Series that baseball right now is more popular in America than basketball. Zero. Now, for years, everybody has been under the belief, and I think it's because of ESPN's flagship programs that constantly talk basketball. Get Up and First Take. And I mean, there are discussions in September during football season about who's better, Giannis or Steph Curry, as if anybody cares. So they've conditioned the American consumer to believe that more people care about basketball, but there's no way they do when, again, 26 million are watching Game 7 of the World Series compared to 16 million for Game 7 of the NBA Finals. And I think baseball needs to take a big lesson from this. A very important lesson. Because baseball right now is headed into a very contentious labor negotiation. It's already gotten contentious, where the PA is accusing an agent of being a mole for the owners and the commissioner is desperate to have a salary cap, and he's going clubhouse to clubhouse, and Bryce Harper is telling the commissioner, get the fuck out of the clubhouse, and it's already contentious. They want a salary cap. They want, the owners of baseball do not want the Dodgers to be able to buy a championship team. Although the Mets are trying to buy a championship team and they can't even make the playoffs, but they do not want the Dodgers to buy championship teams. Be very careful, baseball. And I'm going to tell you why. Because the owners that are pushing this are the small market owners who don't draw 26 million viewers for Game 7. It's Colorado, it's the Miami Marlins, it's the A's, it's the teams that nobody really wants to watch. When the NFL makes big decisions, they don't make the big decisions for Tennessee or Cleveland. They make them for the Dallas Cowboys and the Green Bay Packers. Right now, baseball is on the up. The rules changes have been great for baseball. Attendance is up. TV ratings are up. The World Series is as popular as it has been since the Chicago Cubs won it 9 years ago. And that was a one-off fluke because we were wanting to see if the Cubs could erase 100 years of history. There was nothing about history in this World Series. It was just two great teams playing great baseball with high stakes and drama. Do not ruin the momentum that your sport is finally starting to build up. For years, one of the biggest problems baseball had was they didn't have star players. Derek Jeter and Sammy Sosa and Barry Bonds and Chipper Jones and Mike Piazza were gone. And it was a sport with Paul Goldschmidt and Mike Trout, who was never on a good team. They had to launch an ad campaign so that you could get to know who some of these young players were that they thought were going to be stars, whether it was Juan Soto or Ronald Acuna or Francisco Lindor or whomever. Well, now baseball's got stars. Shohei Ohtani is a star. Mookie Betts is a star. Vladimir Guerrero Jr., star. Yoshinobu Yamamoto, star. They've got stars now that people are going to want to watch on TV. They've got a big, bad villain that is always around that people want to watch on TV. That's the Dodgers. If you implement a salary cap so the Dodgers can't buy all the good players, the way that the Yankees and the Red Sox used to do it when I was a kid, you're going to eliminate something that a lot of people are watching. And the last thing baseball needs, with a new TV deal on the horizon, that if they're going to blow the doors off the NBA's ratings, they may actually blow the doors off the NBA's TV contract, which is astronomical, $76 billion over 11 years. Baseball may get more money when their TV contract comes up. The last thing you need is a work stoppage. This sport is on the come up. It's been a long time since baseball has been back. 26 million viewers. That is a college football national championship. So I have to tell you, when it comes to what we saw for the World Series, I absolutely loved it, even though my team, and my team's the Braves, but my second team, the Blue Jays, my family team, even though they lost. And boy, did they lose in the chokiest fashion you could ever lose. I mean, those pants were freaking stained brown at the end of that game. Whether it was not executing at the end of Game 6, Ernie Clement comes up and he expands the zone and swings at the first pitch and pops up to first base. And then the next guy hits the ball to left field and Addison Barger can't run the bases. And then in Game 7, to give up a home run to the ninth place hitter with one out in the ninth inning in a one-run game, to not be able to execute the bunt in the eighth inning, to not be able to bring home the winning run in extras. Holy shit, what a tough pill to swallow for Toronto. I can tell you, it's a great World Series. It was a fabulous World Series. I mean, I was switched out of YouTube TV so I could watch college football. And I thought I was going to be doing a lot of switching back and forth. No multi-viewer because YouTube TV is the only one that's got the good multi-viewer. So no multi-viewer for baseball and college football on Saturday. And I was watching UT and Oklahoma on my phone, keeping up with it. But I was watching the World Series. And I can't imagine that I was the only person who watches a lot of college football and watches UT the way I watch UT that was like, I got to watch this World Series. So I thought the World Series was incredible. So I had to get that off my chest too. That's it for us today. Great show. Thank you so much for your participation. Tomorrow, we will be live at 2. The trade deadline is at 3. If the Titans make moves, we'll stay on past 3 just to make sure that we cover whatever the Titans may do. I expect the Titans to make moves. We will keep it locked and loaded. Like and subscribe. Tell all your friends. Stillman and Company. That's the show that you want them listening to, that tells you the truth about Sam Darnold and tells you the truth about the Tennessee Titans and everything else. Everybody, thank you so much. Like and subscribe, and also subscribe and download wherever you get your podcasts. Stillman and Company, 440 Sports. Like and subscribe. We'll see you tomorrow too.